to him, even when it seems like nobody is looking, to say, God, I'm going to be faithful and obedient to you. And so today we continue on with 2 Kings 2, 1 through 12. And today we're going to talk about being refined and ready. Refined and ready. See, one of the things we need to understand about being refined and ready is sometimes it hurts, doesn't it? Sometimes it's not a pleasant experience to get refined and ready. I've never experienced an eyebrow wax, but I can't imagine it feels too good. But some people, that's what they do to be refined and ready, don't they? And so we got to recognize that in our spiritual walk, there's going to be times where we are going to need to be refined and ready, and it may not always feel good. But let me ask you this question. Have you ever been given a moment where somebody said, ask for anything? You ever been in that moment? You ever been in that moment where someone said to you, hey, I want to know what you want. What would you like? I remember a few months back, I try not to think about it because it was cold at that time. And those of you that know me, you know I don't like cold. But I remember when my brother Bobby came to me and asked me and said, hey, what would you like for Christmas? I didn't really have a good answer, quite frankly, because I really didn't need a whole lot, right? But there's moments in our life when people ask us, what would you like? What do you need? And when that happens, what do you ask for? What's on your mind, right? I remember as a kid, of course, right? When somebody asked me, what do you want? What did I want? I wanted toys. And then when I got a little bit older, I wanted musical instruments, and I wanted music, and I wanted art supplies, and I wanted all these things, right? But you know, what benefit to eternity do those things have? You see, when somebody asks us that question, how is it different from when you were a kid if you're now growing up to where you are now? What would you ask for now? Has it changed? Has the attention gone from yourself to others? If someone were to say, ask for anything and I will give it to you, are you still looking inward and focused on yourself, or are you focused on the bigger picture of life? You see, that moment says a lot about what we value. When somebody says, what do you want? It reveals our heart. It reveals our values. It reveals where we are at this point in time. But here's something else I've come to learn, is that sometimes our request can lead us into uncomfortable circumstances. I'm not going to get into the story today because of time, but there was a time in my life where I had a deep request to the Lord. And I was praying fervently for this one thing to happen. But what I didn't realize was my heart wasn't ready when it did happen. And so the Lord answered my prayer, but in him answering my prayer, there was a lot of uncomfortableness in my circumstance. And so now I had to learn how to grow through my request. What I valued in that moment was important. It was not self-centered, but Christ-centered. But my spiritual walk with God was not quite ready for what I received. And so God had to then take me and shape me and continue to mold me even once I got my request. And so, what's something in your life that you stuck with even when it was uncomfortable? You see, I found out after I prayed that prayer fervently for a while and that answer came true, that all of a sudden there was an uncomfortableness that I was experiencing. But I wasn't going to change it for anything in the world. I was going to continue to move forward and allow God to do what he needed to do to shape me now and refine me to be able to handle and to be able to enjoy the work that he did of what I had been looking for. And so what's something in your life? You know, maybe earning your degree, if you have a degree here today, maybe that was really tough and it was uncomfortable, but you stuck through it. Maybe you were training for a sporting event. Maybe you had a desire to be the best on your track team. And so you kept pushing and you kept pushing and you stuck with it even when it hurt. Even when you had to get up at hours that nobody else would get up at. Maybe there's been something in your workplace that you've been continuing to stick it through even when it was uncomfortable. Maybe it was navigating a season in your marriage that was very difficult. And you said, you know what? I made a vow. I made a vow and I made a commitment. I'm going to stick with this, even in the uncomfortableness that I'm currently experiencing, because I know God can work and move. Maybe for some of you, you just wanted to be a parent so bad, and now you're thinking, why in the world did I have that desire? Why couldn't I have just been happy to bring somebody else's kids over to the house once in a while, fill them with sugar, and send them home? And you feel like quitting. You feel like throwing in the towel. But you keep pressing on. Or maybe you're here today and you're thinking, I'm not even sure what I believe about Jesus. You know what? I used to be on fire for God. But man, life's got so tough and so many things have happened and I'm not really sure God's even there right now. Maybe you're here today and you're thinking, this may be the last time I come here because I'm not sure it's worth it. It's uncomfortable and I'm not really sure what I believe. Maybe you're here today and you're exploring faith. Maybe you've never made a commitment to Jesus. And you're thinking, I don't know if I could, because I don't know if I could stick through it, because God may ask some really tough things of me. He may want me to give up some stuff that I'm not ready to give up. You see, for each of us, there's moments in our life when we got to decide, am I going to stick with it? Or am I going to walk away? You know, as we were singing that song, Hungry, offering all of me, you know what was going through my head? Was how many of us are willing to deal with so much junk at our jobs, offering them all we have to them, and yet when things get tough with God, we just turn away and walk? We'll give everything to a place that in the end means nothing for all eternity. Yeah, we might have some friends there. Obviously we get a paycheck that helps pay our bills. But we'll give everything. We'll offer everything to them. And yet we hold stuff back from God, the one who created us and cares for us and loves us so much. And so today, are we ready to be refined? Are we ready to do whatever it takes? Because why do we stick with it when things are uncomfortable? Why do we stick with it? Sometimes we need to realize we shouldn't stick with it. There are some things in life we need to walk away from, surrender. But there are other things that we stick with because we know in the end it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. And so we continue to go back to that place of employment because we know that we need to pay our bills at the end of the month, and we know we want to go on vacation, and we know we want a retirement, and so we keep doing it because we know there's some worth to it. Yet there is no greater worth than serving the Lord with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And yet when things get tough, we often won't stick through with what God is calling us to, will we? Keep going. We all have those moments where the temptation to walk away is strong. But something in us says, keep going, because this matters. Keep going. And so for some of you, you may remember back in the 80s, a young man who wanted to learn how to fight. His name was Daniel. Or, as his sensei said, Daniel-san. You see, in the Karate Kid, we were introduced to Daniel. And he was eager to learn martial arts, wasn't he? He showed up, and he was so excited to do this thing. But what did Mr. Miyagi do? He had him wax cars, he had him paint fences, and he had him sand floors. You know, some of us may be wondering, God, why do you have me do this? Why, God, am I walking this road when I want to be over here? And Daniel was confused and frustrated, like some of us might get. Because that's not what he signed up for. He didn't sign up to be Mr. Miyagi's chore boy, did he? To paint the fence, to wax the car, to sand the floor. He wanted to learn how to fight. But eventually, he realized there was a point to the whole thing. Eventually, he realized those boring tasks were building something within him. Wax on, wax off. Paint the fence. Sand the floor. How many of us won't forget those words, but we'll forget the lesson and the story behind them? Because, see, for those of us that have seen the movie, we know that these three things were teaching Daniel the skills that he needed to succeed. Even when he didn't understand what was happening, when he didn't know what was going on, he stuck through it. Though not always wanting to, right? And so just like Daniel, we come across Elisha. And Elisha is in this relationship with Elijah. And Elisha was being prepared for something far greater than he probably could have ever imagined. You see, his journey with Elijah wasn't glamorous. And if you want to know more about their story, it's all throughout 1st and 2nd Kings, and you can read more about their story. It wasn't glamorous. It meant following through uncertainty. It meant following through discomfort. It meant following through a delay. Yet there was a purpose behind it all. And maybe today you're here and you're thinking, God, I don't know what you're doing in my life. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of discomfort going on right now. God, is my clock working? Because it seems like there's a big delay going on. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. And so here's Elijah and Elisha. They're at the end of their long journey together. It's about to come to an end. But because Elisha stayed faithful, he was ready to receive what he asked for. You see, we need to stay faithful so that we can receive what we ask for. But also, we need to stay faithful so we can receive what God knows is best for us. And so in 2 Kings chapter 2, verses 7 through 12, we see this final stretch. And we've read it twice now. We read it last week, and now we've read it this week, of Elisha's journey with Elijah. And what we find isn't flashy. There's no great, big, giant ceremony. There's no huge party for Elijah, is there? And so, let's read this section again together about Elijah and Elisha. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You have asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and a horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel." And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. You see, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, what we find here isn't flashy. Now, some of you may say, chariots of fire coming down in horses, that's pretty flashy, right? But there wasn't a huge crowd of people around to see it, right? It wasn't done in this great big coliseum or even in a crowded city. You see, what we find isn't flashy, but it's faithful. What we find is that Elisha is still walking, still watching, still hungry. And because of that, he's refined and he's ready. You see, as we talked about in 2 Kings 2, verses 1 through 6, Elijah stayed with Elisha through every stop. Even when Elijah said, "Hey, you just stay here," Elisha said, "No, I'm going with you. I'm not giving up. I'm not stopping. I'm going all the way with you." And so they went to Gilgal, and they went to Bethel, and they went to Jericho, and here they are now at the Jordan. And what we see in this with Elijah and Elisha is showing us that growth requires a willing heart. You see, Elisha had to be willing to continue to go with Elijah, even when Elijah told him, "Oh, just stay here. You don't need to go any further." Growth requires a willing heart. Elisha was willing to go through the process, whatever it looked like, whatever it took. I can imagine, and this is just me, right, in my thoughts, just thinking about this, that I am sure that had there been 10 more places Elijah was going, Elisha still would have went to all 10. You see, he was willing to go through that process, whatever it looked like. Elisha didn't just want Elijah's miracles. He wanted Elijah's spiritual maturity and closeness to God, as we talked about last week, because he saw in him the real thing. He saw in him the fact that, you know what, I'm willing to go wherever with this guy. He's not leaving me behind. I'm riding these coattails. You see, as James 4:8 tells us, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. You see, growth requires a willing heart. And Elisha was willing to go through the process. Are we willing to go through the process, whatever it looks like that God is taking us through? Are we willing, when things seem tough and they're not going our way, to continue to push through? Or maybe we're sitting here today and we're thinking, you know what, I think God has left me. I think God's abandoned me. What's James 4:8 say? Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. You see, God doesn't leave us. We turn away from God. We stop drawing near to him. But growth requires a willing heart to say, no matter what, I'm going to continue to draw near to God, knowing he's going to respond to me. Because God grows and refines us when we pursue him with a willing heart. We have a responsibility. We have a part to play. Are we pursuing God with a willing heart today? As I asked earlier, this question about being in a moment where someone said, ask for anything. What did you ask for, and what would you ask for now? How has it changed? How has your heart changed? You see, that moment says a lot about what we value. It says a lot about what we hold close. And what we read in 2 Kings 2:9 is exactly what Elijah valued. I should say Elisha. What did he value? What did he hold close? Well, we see that right here in verse 9. It says, when they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, tell me, what can I do for you before I'm taken from you? Elisha could have said anything. He could have said, I want riches. I want land. I want a family. I want my name to be great. I want to be known among the people. But he didn't say that, because what he said revealed his heart. What he said was, let me inherit a double portion of your spirits. This was Elisha's reply. You see, what we learn from Elisha, his hunger for more of God is a mark of maturity. Are we maturing in Christ? Or are we stagnant? Elijah asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit, not for power, but purpose. Now, we need to understand a little bit, right? If we look back in the Old Testament at Jewish tradition and inheritance, we recognize that the firstborn got a double portion of what everyone else got. And so Elisha is saying, I want the spiritual inheritance of who you are. Not the items that you have, not the trinkets, not the wealth that you may or may not have, right? I'm not worried about any of that. What I want to inherit from you is your spirits. And not for power, but for purpose, to proclaim the name of God, so that his name will be great and known among the people. If Elijah were to ask us that same question today, what would our answer have been? Would it have been to receive his Spirit so that we could have that closeness with God, or we've been focused on things of the world? You see, as Matthew 5:6 reminds us, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Are you feeling parched today? Are you feeling dry? Are you feeling empty in your spirits? Are you feeling as if that connection that you once had with God just doesn't seem to be there? Then we need to stop and ask the question, am I hungering and thirsting for righteousness? Am I drawing near to God because we know that if I draw near to God, he will draw near to me? And if I hunger and I thirst for righteousness, I will be filled. Are we too busy in our day to go by day after day after day with a desire, a thought? Boy, it'd really be nice to be filled, but God, I just don't have time. I don't have time today. I can't pursue you with hunger and thirst, God. There's just so much on my plates. And then we get to this moment in our lives where we're parched, where we're dry, where we're empty, and we wonder what happened. You see, to be refined, one must possess a willing heart for growth and a deep desire for more of God to achieve maturity. We're at a crossroads, church, every day. That crossroads is, am I going to dig deeper into growth and desire for God so that I can achieve maturity? Or am I going to be distracted by all the other things that are going on around me? Because to be refined, we must have a willing heart for growth and a deep desire for more of God to achieve that maturity. Because God grows and refines us when we pursue him with a willing heart. Are we willing to wax on and wax off? Are we willing to paint the fence? Are we willing to sand the floor? Are we willing to do these things that just seem menial? That just, God, I don't understand what you're doing. Lord, I don't even know why this is important in my life right now. Are we willing to continue to press on and walk through those things, knowing that there's something on the other side God has for us? Because God refines us through the process. Just like Daniel was being refined through the process. Daniel's strength was being built. His coordination was growing. His instincts to move the way he needed to move were all being refined through the process. And God has a process for each one of us. Church, I'm here to tell you today, none of our processes look the same. But the outcome for every one of them can be the same. The outcome is that we will look more and more like Jesus. That we will have a relationship with a deep, intimate connection to God, our Creator. You see, the journey and the delay weren't punishment for Elisha. They were preparation. Are we willing to do the preparation so that God can refine us through the process? As 1 Peter 1 verses 6 through 7 say, although you may have to suffer for a short time in various trials, such trials show the proven character of your faith, which is much more valuable than gold. Dealing with a difficulty at work, maybe that trial is building up character within you that is showing others around you the strength of the faith that you have in God. And he's using that to be the testimony to those who you're working with. Maybe that struggle you're having in a relationship within your family is the very trial that God is looking to shape you and refine you so that you can become more loving and less focused on yourself. And because you become more loving and less focused on yourself, others around you will see what you have given and what God has done through you, and they'll come to recognize that there is something different about somebody who proclaims and professes Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. They're not just like me. They are different. They're living a life that is holy and pure, a life that is committed, and they're not wavering. And because of that, they desire to want to walk into that and understand it more about what you're living. You see, because God grows and refines us when we pursue him with a willing heart. You know, we talked for weeks about bringing people to Jesus. And some of us think, well, I don't have a platform to stand on. I'm not behind a pulpit on Sunday morning or a microphone. You don't need to be. God is using where you are and what you're doing to be a testimony and a witness to others. The thing we need to press into is, are we using it with the platform that we need to? The one that points to Jesus, or are we using it to point to self? Are we allowing God to work through us? Not just to refine us and shape us, but to refine and shape those around us, to speak into the community of people that we have, so that they will desire to have a relationship with Christ like we do. Because God grows and refines us when we pursue him with a willing heart. And so what does it look like to pursue God with a willing heart? I'm glad you asked the question. The first thing is we need to stay in the journey. We need to stay in the journey. We live in a society today where people so quickly give up on things. They give up on people. They give up on activities. We need to stay in the journey. You see, Elisha had opportunity to quit. Elijah told him at Gilgal, at Bethel, at Jericho, oh, just stay here. He could have just sat down and rested, but he kept showing up. And so stay in the journey. Don't give up in the middle. Press through. Press through. You see, spiritual growth starts when you say to God, I'm not backing out. Even when it's tough or unclear. Even when I'm not sure, God, exactly what you're doing. Even when, God, it just hurts and is breaking my heart. You know, there's nothing that breaks our heart that doesn't break the heart of God. If your heart is breaking for a situation, God's heart has already been breaking. I'm not backing out. God doesn't back out. He's always there. Draw near to me, and I will draw near to you. Second thing is to ask for more. I don't know if I want more of that. Ask for more. Seek God's Spirit boldly. Boldly. You see, Elisha didn't just want Elijah's power. He wanted more so he could do more for God. He wanted more so that Elijah's legacy could live on as well. He wanted more so God would be glorified and proclaimed, not him. This wasn't about Elisha wanting something for Elisha. He wanted it so that the whole world could know who God is and the power that there is in serving the one true God. What's the motive? Why do we want more? Do we want more for ourselves, or do we want more for God? And then trust the refining. Trust the refining. Stay in the journey. Ask for more and trust the refining. The long journey and the testing was part of what prepared Elisha to receive more. Some of us are waiting for more, but we haven't been on the journey long enough. Some of us are waiting for more, but we've already surrendered and walked away from part of what God was trying to do. Some of us want more, but we're not willing to do the preparation. Are we willing to be like Elisha? To experience the long journey and allow ourselves to be prepared to receive the more? And so, are you ready to embrace the season you're in? Some of us spend far too much time trying to embrace the season of the future, when God wants us to embrace the season that we're in. God wants us to bloom where we're planted, not where we want to be transplanted. I might have to turn that into a t-shirt. Are we willing to embrace the season we're in? If it's a difficult season, are we saying, Lord, thank you for this season because I know you're using it to teach me something. I know you're refining me through this. Embrace that season. For those of you that have children, those of you that are grandparents, those of you that have been close to somebody that has kids, even if you didn't have kids yourself, you know that there are some seasons with childhood that are very short, aren't they? And so what do people tell you? Enjoy it while you can, right? Embrace that season you're in, knowing that you're not always going to be in that season. You see, God grows us in the waiting room of life. When we keep showing up, when we keep praying, when we keep obeying, when we keep trusting, it's in those times that God continues to grow us, to shape us, to refine us. Offering all of me. Here I am, God. So let's continually reflect and invite the Holy Spirit to guide us as we consider these following questions. And there's 4 questions on your paper. And I'd encourage you this week to reflect on those questions, to be in prayer about those questions. What area of my life is God refining? Am I spiritually hungry? Or am I spiritually comfortable? Am I in a good place right now that I'm such a good place that I'm not going to let God refine me anymore and stretch me? I'm good. I'll stay here in Gilgal. Or are we hungry, spiritually hungry for all that God has for us? What would it look like to ask God for a double portion in your life? What would it look like? What could God do with your life? And then the 4th question, which I don't have on the screen but is on your papers. What is one way that you've been tempted to stop short instead of continuing to grow? You see, when we recognize and look back at our patterns, we can learn a new way forward. We don't have to keep repeating those same patterns. The things that have tempted us to stop in the past no longer have to tempt us to stop. But we got to know what they are. You see, by 2 Kings 2, Elijah and Elisha had developed a deep relationship with each other. And out of that deep relationship, Elisha had developed deep trust, not just in Elijah, but in the God that Elijah followed. God grows and refines us when we pursue him with a willing heart. When somebody asks you, what do you want? What can I give you? When God asks you, what do you want? What can I give you? That moment says a lot about what we value. So we're going to close with the song. And as we close, if you feel the Lord talking to you, instead of singing, just enter into that conversation with him. Do as David said, search me, O God. Search my heart. Because God is ready to refine us and to continue to refine us and shape us. But the question is, are we willing and are we ready? Purify my heart, O God. Purify my heart. Let me be as gold and precious silver, pure.